Have you ever disagreed with the IRS but weren't sure exactly how to fight back? Understanding all of your options is critical, and tax court is one of the options that business owners should consider when resolving disputes with the IRS. I'm Andrew Bosserman, tax attorney and founder of Boss Tax Law, and in this video, I'm going to cover what tax court is, when you can take advantage of tax court, and the pros and cons of taking your case to tax court. So, U.S. tax court is a federal court that handles tax disputes only between taxpayers such as business owners or individuals and the IRS. So the main benefit of tax court is that it allows you as a taxpayer to challenge IRS decisions before paying the tax. There are other courts you can bring tax cases in, such as U.S. District Court or the U.S. Court of Federal Claims, but in those courts, you actually have to pay the tax first and then sue for a refund. So because of that issue, most individuals and businesses do not want to pay any tax they owe before they bring a case. So most tax cases, are heard in tax court. The other benefit of tax court is that there are judges that all they hear are tax cases. So they really are specialists in tax procedure and tax law. And it covers all sorts of tax: income tax, estate tax, self-employment tax, pretty much anything that the IRS administers. So when should you go to tax court, or how do you get to tax court? So you can go to tax court when you are disputing an IRS action that gives you the right to petition tax court. So most often, this is when you receive what's called a Notice of Deficiency. And a Notice of Deficiency is a letter from the IRS saying that, hey, we are going to assess this tax against you. You owe tax, or it could be penalty and interest as well, to us. And if you don't file a tax court petition within 90 days, this tax is going to be assessed. So that 90-day period is important because from the 90 days from the date of the letter, you have to petition tax court. And that means you have to file a form with the tax court saying, I want to challenge my case in tax court. But there are also other situations where you can go to tax court. If you disagree with a collection action after a collection due process hearing, that can also be challenged in tax court. Also, other instances like innocent spouse cases, or if your passport is certified seriously delinquent due to tax debt, that's another issue. Or if you already go to IRS appeals for an issue and you disagree with the outcome, then you can also petition tax court. But you just can't do it right away if you disagree with the IRS decision. You have to wait until you receive a notice of deficiency or a notice of determination that gives you tax court rights. And also, it's important to know you are able to represent yourself, but it's often not recommended because you really need to know the policies, procedures, and tax law to go to tax court. So a tax attorney can represent you, and that's who most people use to represent them in tax court if they don't represent themselves. Also, some CPAs and some enrolled agents are able to represent clients in tax court, but only if they've passed a special tax court exam and are authorized to practice before tax court. And that's actually a very small number of CPAs and enrolled agents nationwide. So normally you'll have to look for a tax attorney that specializes in tax cases to bring your case to tax court. And like I mentioned, the first step in the process is to file a petition, and you must do that within 90 days of a notice of deficiency. But after that, some pretrial negotiations or settlement conversations go on. Oftentimes, if you haven't had your case heard before the IRS Independent Office of Appeals, oftentimes you might try to work with an appeals officer prior to trial to get that settled, or you might work directly with the IRS attorneys to try and get it settled as well. But if not, then your case may go to trial, and It'll go through normal trial proceedings like you may have seen, you've seen trials on TV before. And although those are fictionalized, it's the same basic idea in tax court. Evidence is presented, arguments, and then the judge decides. There are no juries in tax court. So there's actually two different types of tax court cases, and this affects how formal the tax court proceedings are. So there are small cases, which are cases that have 50,000 or less at issue. And then there's regular cases, which is everything over 50,000, or if you just want to have it tried under regular case status. The benefit of small cases is that it's a little more informal, but the downside is you have no appeal rights. So you have to weigh whether or not you think you might possibly need to appeal if you don't like the decision tax court gives you. But oftentimes, smaller disputes like that are going to be tried as small tax cases. But you have to make that election when you file the petition. So that's an important thing to discuss with a tax attorney when you're filing a petition. So let's just quickly, to summarize, go over some pros and cons of tax court. So the pros are that you don't have to pay the tax the IRS says you owe first. So even if you owe millions of dollars, you can go to tax court, challenge the assessment, and not have to pay any of that up front. The judges in tax court, they're tax law experts because all they hear all day long are tax court cases. And also, a lot of cases in tax court don't actually go to trial. Many settle before trial, either with IRS appeals or the IRS attorneys. So the likelihood of you going to trial is slim unless there are major issues involving facts or an area of the law that is unsettled, or maybe you're making some novel arguments. The cons of tax court is that there are strict deadlines. You have to comply with that 90-day filing period to get access to tax court, and you also have to follow procedural rules. It is a federal trial court, so you should really find someone to help you navigate all those procedural rules, like a tax attorney. There's no jury trials in tax court, so don't think you're going to, persuade sympathetic jurors over to your side because they dislike the IRS as much as you do. That's not how it works. Only a judge decides your case and whether you win or lose against the IRS. And also, just like most courts, it can take, months or most likely years to come to a resolution. You file a petition, there's some pretrial work, and then if you have to go to court, tax court actually travels around to different areas of the country, and to places like North Carolina and South Carolina, they only come once or twice a year. So it can take years to get a resolution. And then the judge doesn't decide immediately after trial who wins or loses, or enters their decision. It takes a while for the judges oftentimes to render their decision. So those are some pros and cons. But in summary, tax court is an extremely powerful tool that business owners and individuals should be aware of when disputing IRS actions, whether that's the result of an audit or a proposed assessment or collections. There's a number of different ways to get to tax court, but you have to get some sort of notice of deficiency or notice of determination in order to go to tax court and avail yourself of having your case heard in that forum. So there's the 90-day period you must file the petition within, which is extremely important to make sure you meet that timeliness deadline. Otherwise, you can't avail yourself of tax court. And although many cases settle, it's preparation is key. You really need to make sure that you have the evidence, an experienced tax attorney or professional to represent you, and also have good arguments and evidence on your side. So if you are involved in a tax dispute and are thinking of tax court, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to look into your situation and schedule a consultation with you to explore your best options, whether it's tax court, another legal forum, or trying to handle it internally with the IRS. So thanks so much for watching.